the Central Bank of Kenya has gained real-time access to customer transactions. So if you're going to make a transaction, or if you initiated a bank-to-bank transfer today or through mobile banking, the Central Bank of Kenya can view your data real-time. You probably received a message that looks like this from your bank, that is on Friday, that was notifying you that from Friday it was not going to be possible to do an RTGS transfer. An RTGS transfer is a type of transfer that allows you to transfer huge sums of money within a short period of time. So you can transfer, let's say, 5 million, 10 million, or even above, like even 500 million within 1 day, as long as you initiate the transaction in the morning. And the reason why they did that was that they were going to upgrade their system for this same cause. The reason why this is important is because, of course, there are several reasons. One is in terms of data, them having access to data accurately. Banks, Kenyan banks, they usually report, or rather they usually prepare financial reports in terms of the transactions that they made, in terms of the amount of money that they lend out to institutions. So there's that type of information that is usually transferred to them. But the fact that this is going to allow them to have access to high quality data, since they can view it on their end. The other reason which I want us to talk about more in depth is in terms of looking at the bigger picture when we're talking about money laundering. One of the reasons why they have made this move is in terms of them being able to identify high-risk transactions, which of course banks usually identify, but now they're going to be able to identify such risky transactions on their end without mainly relying on the bank. In terms of money laundering and how the bigger picture looks like is that last year, Kenya was grey-listed by a financial watchdog that looks into money laundering cases and terrorism financing. This watchdog is known as the Financial Task Force. So we were added to that list as one of those countries that have a high-risk profile in terms of handling terrorism financing and money laundering cases. And one of the reasons why we were added there is because we haven't demonstrated or haven't met the international standards when it comes to fighting corruption or money fraud and even terrorism financing. And if that wasn't enough, this year, to be more specific, in June 2025, Kenya was blacklisted by the European Union as one of those countries that have a high-risk profile. So you can see that it doesn't bring a good image for Kenya. This move made by the Central Bank of Kenya is one of those moves that shows, okay, as a country, we are starting to make effort towards handling money laundering cases, and now we're going to have access to such information and identify some of these risky transactions on our end. Now, last year in 2024, we as Kenya, we also have a watchdog on our end that is known as the Financial Reporting Center. So what the Financial Reporting Center does is that it looks at some of these transactions, the ones that, of course, the Central Bank of Kenya is now going to have access. They identify areas or transactions that have been made in terms of money laundering. So they came up with a report, that is last year when we were grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force, that there were several avenues of money laundering. So there are some which involved cryptocurrency, there are some which involved internal lending, there are some which involved shell companies. So we have companies here in Kenya that don't necessarily have any operations and they're being used to transfer some of these funds. So those were some of the areas that were identified. The one that is of, again, particular interest right now is the one that is relating to cryptocurrencies. Again, don't forget the bigger picture, which I'm trying to build here, that Kenya came up with a bill known as the Virtual Assets Service Providers Bill 2025. So this bill is meant to provide a framework that can be used to look at virtual assets. So we are talking about cryptocurrencies. Remember, cryptocurrencies is one of the areas that was identified for money laundering. Let me just give you some perspective around that. According to that report that was done by our financial watchdog, the Financial Reporting Center. I'm going to leave a link to that document so that you can check out some of those cases, real life cases. There was one that was identified where we had 12 Kenyan individuals, very young, up to 25 years of age, that were being used to do money laundering. And how it was done was that these 12 Kenyan individuals transferred money from an account here in Kenya, and it was later identified that the money came from one account. They transacted this money that was worth billions, and this money was then transferred through crypto to another virtual asset service provider. Virtual asset service provider is a company that allows you to transact through cryptocurrency, and this company was located in Malta. So that's how that company was able to identify that such transactions were fraudulent, because later on, when they made the inquiry in terms of the purpose of that money, in fact, the transactions were quite similar amongst these 12 Kenyan individuals. The money was then later transferred from that virtual asset service provider company to another wallet, a single wallet. So you can see how money found its way to another country. So the reason why we have the virtual asset service provider's bill, it has not yet been made law. It's on its third reading by Parliament. But once it's there, we as a country, we're going to have a framework. We're going to have institutions. In fact, the Central Bank of Kenya is going to be one of the authorities that are going to regulate crypto. Then we also have the Capital Markets Authority, the one that regulates stocks, the one that gives licenses to brokers, stock brokers, or even funds like money market funds, fixed income funds. So these institutions are going to have oversight when it comes to when it comes to crypto. Currently, we don't have a framework in place. We don't have institutions that hold these companies that deal with crypto accountable. So that is in line with money laundering. So you can see the bigger picture. Again, the question that you might ask is, how can crypto be regulated here in Kenya? Because cryptocurrency is decentralized. We don't have a specific government that looks into crypto. So that's why it's one of those avenues that can easily be used for money laundering cases like the ones that were identified. Think of it this way. Currently, we don't have authorities that regulate crypto here in Kenya. And we're going to have the Central Bank of Kenya the Central Bank of Kenya and the Capital Markets Authority. Remember, the Central Bank of Kenya is going to have, or they currently have, access to real-time bank transactions. So think of it this way. If I, as Ivy, go ahead and start a company that is going to be providing cryptocurrency services, for example, or let me just say this, my company is known as Kenyan Coin. That's a good name for a company. So Kenyan Coin is a company where I'm going to come up with my own crypto, with my own coin that can be used to do transactions. So the fact that I'm going to come up with my own coin called the Kenyan Coin, and this coin, this digital money, is being traded like a stock. Think of it this way. Somebody has to buy the Kenyan Coin, somebody has to sell the Kenyan Coin. Then now the Capital Markets Authority has to chip in. Assuming that this Kenyan coin that I have come up with is going to be used to pay for nyama choma, or even to pay for goods and services at the supermarket, then now this Kenyan coin is acting like a currency. It's acting like money because it's being used to pay. So now the Central Bank of Kenya has to chip in. So the Central Bank of Kenya cannot directly regulate my transaction, but they can regulate the company that is in charge of these transactions. Another angle to look at it is that if this company that I've started, Kenyan Coin, of course, it will have to do transactions with banks, right? I have to have my own wallet with banks, because at the end of the day, the bank is the payment gateway, the common payment gateway for most businesses. I would even say for all businesses, if not for most businesses, especially big businesses. So when you look at it from the bigger perspective, you can see that either way, the Central Bank of Kenya is going to have access to this information, and even to the virtual asset service providers, especially the companies, even if it's not your individual transactions through crypto. So this move by the Central Bank of Kenya is going to help us build our reputation, especially when it comes to us being struck off that grey list, and also that blacklist by the European Union. What do you think about this move by the Central Bank of Kenya? Do you see it as infringing your privacy now that they can be able to see your data in real time? Or do you see it as a move for the greater good when it comes to handling cases of money laundering? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments.